Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. I see we are at 22 people so far, so I can still wait a few seconds, but we can start very shortly with the webinar, given we have a short time and probably a lot to discuss. I'll wait for one more minute. I see people coming in. That's really great. Welcome, everyone. We haven't started yet. We're still waiting a few more seconds or more people to be able to log in. I hope everyone is doing fine this morning. Maybe some of you have breakfast with you. Okay, well, I see a reasonable amount of people joining. So maybe we could just kick off now. So good morning, everyone. I'm Cathy. I'm a senior consultant at Dr2 Consultants, which is a public affairs agency in Brussels specialized in sustainability, energy, mobility, and digital tech sectors in EU affairs, but also Benelux public affairs. And I'm happy to welcome you to this latest breakfast meeting and the first in a series of 3 webinars to discuss the Data Act. And today we will zoom in on the impacts of the Data Act also on the European sustainability goals. So the Data Act and the data economy more broadly, we follow it closely at DR2. And if this is a topic of interest to you and you would like to stay up to date, feel free to subscribe, of course, to our monthly services. So I'm actually as eager as you to hear about our speakers today, but please allow me to set the scene first very quickly. So in February, on the 23rd, the Commission published a proposal for regulation called the Data Act, which is part of the EU data strategy that was presented 2 years ago in 2020. What's the Data Act? It's the EU's horizontal, non-personal industrial data sharing framework, and its core objective is to facilitate access to and the use of data by consumers and businesses. And it wants to better exploit massive increase in volume of non-personal data generated by humans and machines these days. Actually, 80% of industrial data is never used. So it aims to put users and small and large providers on a more equal footing in terms of access to data. The European Commission wants to develop this data economy, be a world leader, and expects actually to create 270 billion of euros of additional GDP by 2028 already. So concretely, the proposal deals with business to consumer data sharing, business to business data sharing, and of course also business to government data sharing when only absolutely critical. So, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome our guests for today, Mr. Paolo Falcioni, Director General of APPLiA, representing the home appliance industry in Europe, and Mr. Radu Surdeanu, Senior Director, Government Affairs at Siemens Energy. Thank you very much to you both for being here today, and we look forward to hearing your views on the Data Act and how it influences the EU's competitiveness and sustainability goals. Following your opening statements, I will ask you a few questions, and then we can open up the questions to the audience, who can ask their questions in the chat box. So, Mr. Falcioni, you're the first on my screen, so please feel free to kick off.
Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for the kind invitation. APPLiA represents the home appliance sector in Europe, and that is the sector that is manufacturing home appliances like fridges, washing machine, vacuum cleaner, devices that we all use multiple times per day. And to us, a digital transformation is really a must for Europe at all levels and at all sectors. It is a key pillar of the new industrial strategy, and it is also central to the twin transition which the European Commission adopted as a defining element of its agenda for future sustainable growth. Against this, which is in a sense the background of the discussion, and as a complement to the prior Data Governance Act, then the proposed Data Act, which is the topic that we are discussing today, would like to be, as you just said, a key enabler toward a data-driven economy, with the aim of guaranteeing fair treatment of data and ensuring innovation, while at the same time fostering data access for both users and providers on an equal footing. Now, that's the aim. And I would like, during this conversation, to understand whether this aim it is actually achieved with this text, or some, and according to us, much more should be done in order to make the text more usable. What we miss on this proposal, so that I can set also the scene, it is that this is going to place obligations for connected products manufacturers to design applications in a way to make data accessible to a user in a simple, secure, and direct manner. And that we have to understand whether that is feasible, how long we should take in order to get there, and which specific applications would demand further assessment. So even though we are deeply committed to facilitate the transition toward a circular economy by unlocking all the value that we can see in the data that is shared in the EU across multiple actors, we need that this piece of legislation would answer a number of very fundamental questions. Which data should be made available? To whom? To what extent the protection of trade secrets would apply, and how that would help to square the circle between the European competitiveness and the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Falcioni. And are you happy for me to call you Paolo?
Please do.
Great. Yeah, you raised important issues and questions, for sure. I don't think you're the only one raising them. But first, I'm very eager to hear from you, Mr. Radu Surdeanu.
Yeah, thanks, Cathy, for the kind invitation, and good morning, everyone. And great to be here to discuss this. So I'm representing Siemens Energy. So in this event, and we are a large energy company offering product solutions and services across the entire value chain in generation, transmission, and storage, from conventional to renewables part. But what we have seen now in the past years, and you see that we are at an inflection point as an industry, but also the world is at an inflection point where there's enormous technology breakthroughs. There's the twin transition between green and digital, but there's also a shift in mindset that we need, and the skills in order to reach these great ambitions of the Green Deal, what we had. And this, there are tremendous challenges, and we cannot solve them just by the conventional way of thinking. So we need to transcend the traditional engineering that we are used to in the, for example, in our field, in engineering part. And of course, we have this tool at our disposal, artificial intelligence, but this goes hand in hand with data. So in that sense, we really welcomed the idea of the Commission. Let's have a Data Act in combination with the AI Act. And if you look for the energy part, what we do with data, there's a lot of things that AI and data can do, like the dealing with the complexity of decarbonization and decentralization. Look at a predictive maintenance of the hardware and the durability and reliability of that. The autonomous operation of our power plants, improved grid stability, and all the efficiency improvements that we can have. So basically what you have is that you need to have a combination of a high quality of data, working in a co-creation ecosystem with a lot of stakeholders. Basically, what AI showed us that we need to break down the silos, and we need to work together. And then you need to have a horizontal topic of cybersecurity, of course. And whether this Data Act, I mean, the ambitions are very high on this Data Act, and I will not repeat what Paolo fantastically described and summarized on the Data Act. But the level of ambitions does not match with what the actual proposal looks like. And what we would like to see is that this Data Act proposal will support us moving from, the idea that there was so far, data as a cost center for a lot of companies, moving towards data as a strategic capability for us. So how can we do this? How can we create value from data? And this is what we looked very closely in at Siemens Energy, and we create data principles, a few data principles that we have on data has the intrinsic value. It can enable rapid innovation, but the quality is paramount. The data excellence, we need data excellence in everything we do. And then to have in all the data offerings, to have trust by design. And this goes hand in hand with the accountability that we have, that we ensure that the integrity in the use of the data. And of course, the last but not least, on the cybersecurity and security by design for the data. So in that sense, we were looking forward for the Data Act, and to set the stage and then to go a bit beyond what Paolo was saying, or complementary to Paolo was saying. We have the same worries, indeed, and then we will go through I think through this event, through the questions, we will go through that. What we truly welcome is that this Data Act will support the standardization efforts for interoperability. We are working together with all the stakeholders. We need interoperability and standards. So we welcome that very much. But this has to be done in a participatory and industry-driven practices, not only with a very limited part of the stakeholders, but really involve the industry from the beginning. So I will stop here, and then looking forward for the questions and discussion.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Radu. It's super interesting to hear you talk. And I feel that you could go on for hours talking about the subject.
Yes.
But yeah, you both raised good questions already. And maybe this leads to my first more general question to you both, which is, do you think that there are enough incentives in the Data Act to invest in data processing and continue to do this? Or will the law dissuade companies from innovating out of fear of being caught in the scope of the regulation? Maybe Radu, you can go first.
Paolo, go first. Paolo, go. Yeah.
Well, definitely for industry to continue innovating, then there should be also clarity in the way of upcoming obligations that will surely stem from the Data Act. For instance, the fact that the Data Act it is setting up a framework for fostering data sharing from Article 3 to Article 5, it's good. What I find it is missing there, it is the principle, the full respect of the principle of contractual freedom. So there should be a clear distinction between business to business type of contract and business to consumer type of contract. And that is one of the bases to have a clear incentive for continue innovating. I found personally some of the provisions in the law to be rather vague. For instance, the fact that Article 9 speaks about reasonable compensation. What is reasonable to me could not be reasonable to you. So having terms like reasonable in legislation, to me, is a bit strange, because it doesn't give the proper incentive to anybody who is in the innovation chain to continue doing so. Because unless there is a clear understanding, there are possible roadblocks. Another point that I would like to bring to the discussion, and then get also your view on that, it is the protection of trade secrets, which is essential to innovate. So any innovation has a reward, because it can bring your product further in the market, as long as you can protect what you have invented. If there are provisions in this text like that trade secrets can only be disclosed provided that all specific necessary measures are taken to preserve the confidentiality of trade secrets, well, trade secret should not be disclosed. Otherwise, there is no secret. So those are the elements that, to me, in a nutshell, should be tackled in order to continue fostering innovation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paolo. I will build up on what Paolo was saying, because they said, the Commission says, look, this is a horizontal piece of legislation, which is fine. It's great. And then you have a fantastic disclaimer saying that we will come up with sectorial approaches for this. And we are looking forward to discuss with the Commission on how to approach sectorial. But already from the beginning, there is no distinction between B2B and B2C. And that's a bit worrying, is that I understand it's a horizontal piece of legislation. And then, there's a disproportionate ratio between incentives, what you want to give or how you construct this piece of legislation, and the regulatory burden, which will give a lot of administrative burden, not only for the large companies, but also for the SMEs, which for them will be even bigger obstacle to go for digitalization. And we've seen it in Germany, how few companies are using AI and data because of the obstacle we have already now. And even just awareness of what data can give you, and then you come up with also this burdens that you have here, and then addressing the trade secrets. And I'm happy Paolo had the text already there to read it. It's such a long statement there on the trade secrets, which basically says nothing. And trade secrets and IP, it's a interference into a contractual basis that we have with our customers that is not necessary. Why wouldn't you trust the industry that we're doing the right stuff? And contractual basis should be there always, how we deal with the data with our customers and so on. And then come from a different view, come from an incentive that we need to share the data and how to share the data among us. Because if you look at the big picture, of course you want all the data to be shared, and it's a good starting point. But now it's time to listen to the stakeholders.
Thanks very much, Radu and Paolo. It's you're right. It sounds like the Commission wants to be fair for everyone, but it sounds like it's a recipe for unintended consequences, given the vagueness and the questions it raises. It's just, let's hope that they are open to hearing about obstacles and issues that you all encounter in the future. And as you said, the Data Act going forward to the European Parliament and the Council, who knows what else might happen and how the text will look like at the end, of course. So mindful of the time, I'm going to ask you another question, maybe related to more the sustainability and circular economy goals of the EU. A question to you both as well is that so far, administrative burdens, time laws, the lack of clear, harmonized rules in the EU have made it less appealing and effective. and easy for businesses to share data and information, which of course could benefit circular economy. Do you feel that the Data Act will solve this? Radu, maybe to come back to one point that you said earlier in your opening statement, is that we need a change of mentality for this twin transition. Is this a good stepping stone to have harmonized rules in the EU that is that a good way to change this mentality? And
what I would like to take the angle of one of the ideas that we have and one of the solutions that we are offering on the digital twin, and because this you can apply it in several ways. So the way we look at it, we look at the power plant, we look at the grids, we look at the reliability of our assets, and the stability of this. Now, what if we were to create a digital twin of Europe, of the energy infrastructure? Then you can address all the sustainability topics and all the sustainability aspects, and also the circular economy topics. And for that, of course, you need to share the data between several stakeholders. And Data Act could be one of the pieces of legislation of harmonizing the rules and incentivize everybody to share the data in a proper way and so on. So I really like how our chief data officer, Micheline Casey, say, data is a team sport. So it's great. I mean, we should work together, but we should set clearly the rules that we agree upon. And then you will see a total new ways of looking at this very conventional, traditional industry, the energy industry, and then we can go beyond the traditional way of doing engineering and work together. So I think it has the potential, but not in this form. So I think we have really a long way to go for that.
If I can build to that, it is clear that there is a potential on everything that is digital and therefore data, which is like the oil of the digital world, to help Europe achieve the decarbonization goal. Today, I received a study done for Belgium by Agoria, which is one of our members, and the title is How Digital Technologies Can Contribute to Reduce Carbon Emissions in Belgium. And there are a number of examples of how actually data can be used in order to foster decarbonization, which is clearly one of the challenges that we see for our generation. And taking the team sport example, which I like very much, we have to work cooperatively to that extent. But that does not mean, as it is written in the Data Act today, that all data generated by everybody, by every product, should be accessible to anybody. I mean, the way in which the Data Act is written today, it means that any product that is placed on the European market generating data should make, if the user wishes so, be accessible to any third party. Well, there is a kind of difference between getting the value of data and opening up data to everybody, no matter what, regardless of trade secrets and regardless of contractual law. So we all wish for making it happen, like the decarbonization through digital technologies. But what I fail to understand, it is the difference between the two. And I stop it here.
Thanks very much. Before I ask another question, let me remind everyone that you can put your questions in the chat box and we can read them afterwards. But happy to go on. I have a lot of other questions. So in July last year, the European Commission published a revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive, to improve access to data on energy consumption through more accurate metering. Radu, how do you see the synergy between the actions taken by the EU on, for example, the EED and the proposal here on the Data Act?
Yeah, so what we looked at the EED. Of course, we are looking closely to the AED for our portfolio, indeed. And what you see is that the EED is not interfering with the Data Act, or the other way around. The Data Act or the digital offerings of company, it doesn't interfere with that. And indeed, you could go, and Paolo mentioned it. I mean, digital has so much potential for decarbonization, and to go towards to have the transition towards a carbon neutral operations for the entire industry. However, what we have seen in the EED, again, is also the lack of incentives for this kind of solutions, like for system efficiency, or for just a digital solution for district heating, to give an example. There's no incentives. It's more, and you see the same in the Data Act. Is that there's a disproportionate ratio between the incentives and the regulatory part.
If I can build to that, to me, energy flows and data flows in the transmission, distribution, and then use of energy are both extremely important. So I would say that now data flow associated with the energy distribution is as important as the energy itself. As we have seen from the Repower Europe communication, so the willingness to actually reduce our dependencies from external like energy sources, that will mean increasing the quantity of renewables, for instance, which is inherently variable. Therefore, we have to match the availability of energy with the use of it. And that can be done only through data. So that's an excellent example where the interoperability that you were mentioning is of paramount importance. That is an area where we all can contribute. So industries, clearly, because they are major users of energy, but also homes, through the concept of matching the use of air conditioners, water heater, heat pumps, as they are like the new frontier for the domestic best use of energy, electric energy in the home, with the availability of energy. The Energy Efficiency Directive, it is setting, like, among other things, goals for member states, and that might be like a cascading incentive, but it's not setting incentives per se. It is just telling member states what they have to do, and then they should consider, but if I want to get there, then I have to give incentives. So it's kind of a second-order effect to me, the incentives there. But the point here to me is that data flows and energy flows are perfect examples where this can actually work in synergy and provide the best of the two worlds.
Thank you very much, both of you. There was another very simple question, maybe not a simple answer, but was wondering if, given the Data Act now, do you think that your business or your industry will be boosted or rather hampered in developing further?
Well, I mean, we both said is that the Data Act has the potential clearly to boost our business, and there are several things that they're missing in the thing, like the definition of data to be shared, and what you see is that it clearly looks at the cloud ideas, but if you see in the coming 10 years, the edge computing will take over. So is it the data produced by the edge devices? You call it IoT devices now, but they're gonna be much smarter than just a sensor sending data. Do you consider the data from the edge devices to be data to be shared, and how to be shared? And Another one troublesome thing here is the very aggressive timeline to switch from one company to another one. It's 30 days. Basically, what you do is disincentivizing long-term investments for a better service, and this should be really looking very critical at, because what we want to offer, I mean, the way we work is mostly that our customers own the data, and they share with us data on the contractual basis only what we need to produce, to do our analytics to help them in their business. And so they own the data, and they shouldn't interfere with that. And the way it is done here is that the data holder has all the data, which is not true at this moment. So we should refine it much more on this. So indeed, I mean, it has the potential, but there are many things that we need to look at more carefully. Yeah.
One examples of things that we have to look more carefully, I think it is the specific instantiation of this general and horizontal legislation to different systems. You spoke about cloud computing or edge computing. I can speak about the fridge, right? And let's make the example of a fridge. I have a connected fridge that is generating data to understand its inner behavior. So how much the compressor is running, how many times the lamp of the fridge is going on, if there is a good heat exchange, and all of that. That is data generated by a product. According to the current text, that should be made immediately available to consumers, real time, like that. Now, I wonder what's the value for consumers to read the memory, zeros and one, of data that is stored in the device. Zero. What could be interesting, it's an app, right, that would work on that and would tell to the consumer nice information about the working of the fridge, if there is some impending problems or anything like that. Very rare, I have to say. But that is useful. So it's not the data itself, as it is written here, that is useful. Not at all. It's not at all useful. Then imagine if the user would say, I want to sell this data. That is possible, according to the Data Act. I want to sell to whom? To a competitor, because the competitor is offering more than my branded fridge. This is not at all taken care of by the Data Act. That is easily feasible. And trade secrets must be disclosed to the extent that it is needed to understand the data, which means that the manufacturer A would give all the knowledge of his fridge to manufacturer B. No, thank you. So that's the example of a very niche application of this, which has not been taken into consideration at all. So no respect for trade secrets, no respect for contract law, opening up fridges like this, fridge is just an example, to anybody. So this has good intentions, but unfortunately, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So we have to avoid that we are heading straight to hell, in a sense.
Thank you very much, Paolo and Radu. I will go and check the questions from the chat box. We have an interesting question from Christina from PwC, who is asking a question to you both. And she asks, you highlight the importance of data sharing on the basis of contracts between customers and businesses. Do you envision a greater freedom for customers to negotiate the contracts they agree to with regard to data sharing and processing?
Yes, yes, and I think this is in that sense it's a great step, because I was discussing also with our guys in the business. How do we deal with this? Shall we take an approach from fear, or an approach from abundance? Right? It's a total different way. So, do we fear that the big cloud guys who have fantastic analytics will take over our business, or do we look from abundance, from our abundant experience in the past 30 years with data, and our domain knowledge that we have as our unique selling point to our customers? So I think the customers will have really a good choice now, and they will have a great position, and they will also enable us to improve our services by saying, look, this is what I would like to see from you, and this is what I see from the other ones. Because if you look statistically, there are smart people everywhere. They're not we do not have as the only company that has the smartest people around, or any other company. Statistically, we are more or less the same. And we would look from our strengths and our domain knowledge that we have with our analytics and the way we work in a trustworthy way with our customers. But the customers, of course, they will have the choice now to choose from different services. What worries me is that this switchability between the service provider that you have that will de-incentivize a lot of companies to involve long-term investments in their products, and therefore the quality might go down. I mean, this is one road to hell, what Paolo was mentioning. And the other thing is, let's say they switch to a third party, right? Because the customer will have the freedom to do this and say, look, and I will try you for 30 days and then I'll see afterwards. And they will switch the data to the third party, which says, look, I'm going to use it only for this purpose. But of course, smart people have brilliant ideas, and they will come up with a new business model, with a new idea, with a new algorithm. And they might use the same data, because this is how they got the idea. They might use the same data for a different purpose. Will they have to destroy the data? Will they do that? Who's going to reinforce this? How are we going to look at this? This is not at all described here, and this is one of the worries we have. So I think the customer will be indeed at a great point here, but we need to work together, like I said, like a team sport, and then we can get our offering even better and in the same way as we did before, and trustworthy and with accountability for the way we use our data and their data.
Cathy, if I may, in terms of contractual freedom, today customers can already get the best out of the contract that they sign. So I don't see this as actually a great enabler of better contracts for users or for third parties. And on the contrary, when I hear terms like in Article 13.2, allow me to read, a contractual term is unfair if it is of such a nature that its use grossly deviates from good commercial practice. Now, define a gross deviation from a good commercial practice, and then I will be happy. I mean, that's the point. The point is that this text is not actionable. It's a set of principles, but a law is not there to set principles. It's there to set clear goals and correct market imbalances, right? If that is what the DADAC does, I doubt.
Unfortunately, the Commission or the EU haven't always had clear goals and clear legal texts in their track record. So let's hope this will at least be defined. And actually, this is related to another question from Christina from PwC. She asks for both of you, how do you imagine reasonable compensation could be defined less vaguely in the Data Act? So would more rules and principles around this not also infringe on the freedom of contract when companies share data?
I think, Paolo, you named it, so
yes. Given that I was the one bringing
yes.
fair compensation up, then I think I have the right to answer first. Well, one of the guiding principles of economy, it is that when there is an agreement, there is no money left on the table. So all the value is captured by everybody who is participating to that transaction. And here, the principle of reasonable compensation should not be mentioned at all. So a compensation, it is a point of agreement between two actors. One that is offering something, one that is willing to get to that something. And that's the strike point. That's the right point. I mean, here I'm not speaking rocket science. That was invented like 200 years ago, and even further, it was then clarified in the last century. But that's the basic. So the compensation is something that simply does not belong to a legislation. That's my point.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add is this business to government, B2G part of it, where they say, well, in case of public emergency, all the companies should share. They will be forced to share the data, but there is no way. I mean, what Paolo was mentioning is indeed for business to business for us is very clear. It shouldn't be in the text, but for business to government, what is the incentive to do this sharing? What is public emergency? How do you define this? Do you incentivize the companies? Do you compensate the companies for if they need to share or they are forced to share some of the data? So these questions are still unanswered there.
We still have time for one last question that is in the chat, and that is from Dirk. That's a colleague of mine, actually. Do you think that with the Data Act, the EU is a front runner in this field, or are there examples of these types of legislations elsewhere in the world? So where does the EU stand compared to the US and China? Does the Data Act lead to a competitive advantage in the EU?
I have to confess that I do not know enough about what's going on in US and China to answer that question.
Radu, do you have any experience?
I will. Maybe I will not go into what in US and China happens but one of the things what I would like to mention in this question that Dirk has is that there's this discussion on data sovereignty that we have in Europe, and this bothers, of course, a lot the US companies. But if you look at the industry, if you look at where are we using the data? We are using in AI, so we need a lot of data, and it's a very thin line between data sovereignty and data protectionism. I mean, what do we want to solve? Do we want to develop applications that we're going to use them only in Germany or only in let's take it bigger, only in Europe, or do we want to play globally and have a solution for global and improve our algorithms by having a lot of data? So that's a bit worrisome. This discussion, that borders the data protectionism in Europe. That we should have it much more nuanced, especially for companies that play on a global scale.
Yeah, you're right. It's very closely related to the digital sovereignty discourse in the EU, led by the bigger countries in the markets. Okay, well, this leads me to conclude soon, as we've run out of time. Maybe with just one final concluding question to both of you for one final statement. If there was one message you had to convey to EU policymakers, what would be your 1 minute elevator pitch? Paolo, feel free to go first.
Yes, I would say that the principles underlining the Data Act are good. We would share the principles. The way in which the Data Act is written, it is not at all favorable to the innovation and to the contractual, fair contractual practices that are already happening today. I would like for data sharing to remain on a voluntary basis. I would like to see equal level of protection and fair competition for who is generating data, the users and third parties.
What about you, Radu?
Well, thanks. I mean, Paolo took a lot of points, so I can be even shorter. So what I would say to the commissioners, look, data is a team sport, and I really like the way our chief data officer says it. And as a team sport, first we need to keep our eyes on our very ambitious goals and aims for the twin green and digital transition. And yet we need to clearly define the rules of the game. And this should be in a participatory way with the industry together. And it should be industry driven, and then we will solve all these points that already Paolo mentioned and we mentioned through the event to settle this there. So.
That makes sense. I think that's good messages, good pitches, I would say. So thank you very much, both of you, for your contribution. I thought it was really interesting to hear your talk. And I also would like to thank everyone who attended this event. Everyone who registered for this one is also automatically registered for the second and third ones on the 25th of May and the 16th of June, respectively. So we hope to see you again on the 25th of May, where we then zoom in on the transport sector. And of course, feel free to share the invitation within your networks. So yeah, this concludes the webinar. And thank you to everyone, including Paolo and Radu. And I wish everyone a very lovely working day.
Thank you, Cathy. Have a good day.
Thank you, Cathy. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.